This is Ben from Cluster. Welcome to the next episode of Instablinks. And with me today, we have Carlos Rolo, who is one of our technical account managers. Carlos, thanks for joining, mate.
Hello, Ben. Thanks for inviting me.
Today, we are here to talk about, I guess, the current state of Apache Cassandra in the broader marketplace, because we now live in a world where it's not just the open source projects. There are a number of different offerings, all based around, I guess, probably the best way to describe it is the Cassandra API, right? You've got, I guess, enterprise or proprietary offerings built around Cassandra. You've got reimaginings and different, software languages around Cassandra. You have cloud services that are kind of built around the Cassandra API. But one of the things that I think we see time and time again with Instacluster is, some of those have some great promises, but we often see customers coming back to open source, right? And that raises the word migrations, and a database migration. It's enough to leave any of the most seasoned DBAs with a bit of cold blood, right? So I guess, from your experience, why do you see, or I guess, why do we see people want to migrate to Apache Cassandra from maybe other implementations of the Cassandra API?
I think there's a couple of data points. One, that is, especially with the cloud offerings nowadays, two of them pop up really fast. One is costs, either to licensing or the cloud product itself. Although the other one normally is data lock-in. It's your data, right? It's your database. It's your data. Might be your only source of truth, and you are giving it someone else. And sometimes these offerings get you a ton of add-ons, but they might not bring you enough value, or they are difficult to connect to other things that we use. And like open source, it's an ecosystem that is growing more and more, and connectors and plugins, and you can just plug other open source projects on top of each other, and things just they're not locked like this.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I guess you raised a couple of really interesting points there, right? Data lock-in, right? That it happens in a number of different ways, right? Whether it's it's hard to get the data out, as because there's no, for example, I guess bulk export kind of APIs. It could be because it's in a proprietary format. It could be hard to move to an environment that you want to be in, right? You might be all in on one particular cloud, but you might need to support other clouds, or an on-premise environment, or even a hybrid setup. And I think, just the flexibility of being able to grab the open source project and just know that you've got the rights to the code, right? You've got the right to run it wherever you see fit. It just makes a ton of difference for certain use cases, right? And then the other point about, I guess, paying for proprietary features, right? We certainly know that there are definitely, there's definitely gaps in the open source projects. There's no getting around that. But quite often people find themselves paying for, usually it's only like one or two features, right? And I know Instacluster has kind of helped people get around some of that. Do you have any examples, I guess, of, where we've helped people around some of those proprietary features?
So there's, again, like such a critical point. It's like access to the code that lets you play around, do some stuff that you cannot do on the proprietary. And this is something I've dealt with all my Cassandra career, seen tons of things spin off inside companies due to the access to the code, mirroring systems, backups, all kinds of specific backups for specific situations. We do a lot of help on that part. We have the backup software, we open source, we have custom authenticators that people normally pay for the security and integrations. We have LDAP, Kerberos, all open source. So again, the tools for backup, the tools for repairs, data analysis is something that is very crucial for a DBA to figure out an issue on a database. On those proprietary systems, you are locked. Either they provide you the tool or you cannot figure out what's going on. And we have an awesome tool to dive into the SS tables and get all those metrics out. And this is all open source. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. But it also kind of sounds a little bit complicated if you've got to run it yourself, right? I mean, it's one thing to be like, yeah, it's annoying to be on a proprietary system or there's a bit of data lock-in, but let's be honest, some of those have a ton of convenience, right? You don't have to worry about it, blah, blah, blah. So, people might be like, well, I don't necessarily want to run all this stuff myself, which I guess kind of, it leads us to Instacluster a little bit, right?
Yeah. So that's it. We run it for you. That's the good, and we run the open source version. So that's the convenience,
which is huge, right? Because I guess we're running the same version that you can go and get and download from the Apache website, right? You can see the particular Git commit, right? That we're kind of running. But you get all the benefits of not having to run it yourself. And I guess, one of my favorite things to say to customers is because we're running just the pure upstream open source, all the extra bits and pieces, whether it's, a Kerberos or an LDAP authenticator, repair tools or backup tools or whatever that might be, because we open source all of those, we're kind of on the hook for just doing a really good job because we can't lock you in any other way, right? Or at least that's the premise, right? And we certainly find a lot of our customers certainly like that reasoning behind it, right? So switching gears a little bit, right? Let's say you have adopted, whether it's a kind of a proprietary and open core implementation of Cassandra or maybe something else, one of the managed services, and you're like, hey, it was good while we started, but I've had enough, right? I'm either sick of the costs, sick of the lock-in. It doesn't quite do what I want it to do. I don't get the performance for what I'm paying. Let's say you made that decision. What does it look like to move from one of those to Apache Cassandra?
So the migrations, although been done a ton of them, I don't think they are ever easy. So it's never a process that you fire and forget immediately. It's you have to figure out first mapping what is offered by the proprietary product versus what you have in Apache Cassandra. This can be like a completely add-on, like a search add-on that it's available on the proprietary system and it's not offered by Apache Cassandra. And so how do we unplug that into, say, OpenSearch or any other open source tool? Then this can also be at table level, there are specific compactions enabled, specific compressions, the security we talked about, authenticators. And then the second step, it's once we figure this all out, what is there that is in use? We go into your data model because some of the features might made you map your data in a different way. Then we do the basic stuff, configuration files, Java settings, OS settings, and then we start the preparation phase, which is, for me, a very crucial one. Like, run your backups. Check that your backups work. So
yes.
This is normally...
By the way, everyone, you should be checking your backups work whether you're planning a migration or not.
Yeah, because normally that step is, I've done the backups. Like, okay, and do they work? We did the backup. Okay, let's restore them somewhere else and see if that works. This is crucial also because we want to make sure that your data you can return to where you were on your state, or at least we can pick that data and use on Apache Cassandra. And from there, we finalize an implementation plan. And then we decide some more technical stuff, like it's this in-place migration. Are we just replacing the proprietary code with Apache Cassandra, and we can do it in place via rolling restarts? Or this is a bit more complex, like with the new offerings that start to have differences. Although, like you stated it in the beginning, they start to be API compatible and no longer a Cassandra core with something on top. So, and then we have to transit data. If its network protocol is compatible, we connect the data center, we migrate the data over, we validate the data, and it's done. But it's a couple of weeks.
It's interesting. You just mentioned something that kind of tweaks my mind. So you say that some of these are Cassandra API compatible, but they're not Apache Cassandra under the hood. Like there's something brand new. Is that right?
Yes.
Wait, so people are trusting brand new databases that are only a few years old with their data. Like, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't trust a file system that was like less than 10 years old, right? And Apache Cassandra has the battle scars, right? It's done its time, right? Jeez, that's wild.
Like we discussed my experience with 08, I went 08 because at the point there was nothing else. Absolutely nothing else that did what HBase was the thing nearest to it, but it was nothing else out there. Right now, you have a ton of alternatives, and Cassandra has fought these battles, and it's still ongoing. One of the things on the migrations we happen, it's sometimes even within Cassandra versions, very old Cassandra versions are still running flawlessly. It's just, okay, the security patches are out, and we need to take care of that, or take care of legacy software. But those we're still pick 2.1 running. So
it's last the test of time. So when it's speaking of time, do these migrations require downtime, right? Because that's the other thing is like, people for certain use cases are just they can't cope with downtime, or it's got to be very small. So what does that look like for an Apache Cassandra migration?
Most of the times we don't. Like the replace either through a new data center or replacing in place. We don't need. We keep rolling, restarting into the new version. That's normally also we take care of two problems in the migration because we normally upgrade into Apache Cassandra. So we go into a newer version and we go into the open source version. That's the best way to do this.
So just to take an example, right? One of the proprietary offerings, for example, like a DataStax Enterprise or something, right? So you can do that with like no downtime in place, or either with a new data center. Off you go.
Plus, as long as it's prepared and like we identify on DataStax Enterprise, there's a couple of things that we need to be specifically aware as like specific key spaces. We actually have a very open source implementations to deal with that. The topologies, and then we restart the nodes one by one into the Apache Cassandra, or we migrate into a new data center with Apache Cassandra as well. So that's
awesome. So Instacluster, we've got a bunch of tools that specifically built for DataStax Enterprise migrations to Apache Cassandra, and they're all open source, right? So people can go find them on our GitHub, and off you go. Well, that's awesome. And I guess, it's interesting because migrations do have this reputation for being scary and hairy, so to speak. But it sounds like with the Cassandra migration, to Apache Cassandra, you just got to put a little bit of that preparation, that planning, that research up front. But the actual migration itself, once you kind of tick those boxes, sounds pretty straightforward, no downtime, simple enough to kind of do, right?
Yeah, very simple. Once you find it, you kind of babysit it for a while. But I would say, it's like the preparation is key. I don't think there's any airy parts during the migration itself. Cassandra deals with nodes going down and all that things. Well, some specific cases we need to be aware, but that goes into the preparation. That's it. And once you click the button and you start the restarts or you start the streaming, it's mostly controlled from that point. We are dealing with hundreds of migrations, and I think that's not having that much of issues.
Awesome. Well, Carlos, that was super useful. It's good to know that people do have a bit of an out from some of these proprietary offerings. If you are, for example, you're not just on, say, something like DataStax Enterprise, but you might be with, say, one of the Cassandra compatible API ones like a Cosmos or something. We do also have tools like that as well. For example, Shotover is a great open source project that allows you to split and do dual write between two different database systems. If you are working with a Cassandra compatible API implementation that doesn't support that internode protocol that we use to do a lot of these migrations. So there's lots of options out there for people. But, I think, really the thing is I want to leave people with, and you really kind of ticked my mind on this, is that, you don't need proprietary code to run Apache Cassandra, right? And, you have a great experience with Instacluster. Before we wrap it up, is there anything you want to leave folks with, or just a reminder about migrations?
So also there's a massive community on Apache Cassandra, right? So it's something that you might not, that can just, like the mailing lists, the ASF chats, that's a lot of people out there to help you out. That's another benefit of the open source, is normally these massive communities. And I think core about migrations, say test the backups. That's normal.
Test the backup. Well, and just everyone test your backups whether you're migrating or not. You should be doing that anyway. Exactly. And great point on the Apache community. It's one of the best things. It is the best thing about Apache Cassandra, to be honest. The mailing lists, the Slack channels there, definitely jump in, ask those questions. And you've got lots of great people in the community, including lots of people from Instacluster in there kind of helping out. So awesome. All right. Thanks, Carlos. And thank you, everyone. We'll catch you on the next episode of Instablinks.